I'm here in Warley MRC club rooms, arguably the largest and the finest in the land, part of an industrial unit but owned by the club, funded by their magnificent yearly exhibition at the NEC. But I'm here for one particular reason, to look at a superb O-gauge loco depot 82G, and you'll see that in a moment. Now, here I am in front of 82G, a wonderful O-gauge depiction of a BR loco shed in the early 50s, somewhere on the western region with a touch of southern thrown in. And my host and old friend is Peter Sylvester. So, Peter, would you like to explain a little about what you've done here?
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Warley Model Railway Club rooms, and on behalf of my colleagues John Edwards, Nigel Smith and Keith Blake, welcome you to 82G, the loco shed layout.
Thank you ever so much. And during the course of this presentation, we'll hear how it works and something of how it started, because it was a loco clinic to begin with.
The layout itself was conceived in 2003 and became the brainchild of Nigel and John. And work itself started in 2004. It was intended originally to be a test track, because prior to that we had operated around the circuits as the loco clinic, providing information and advice to loco builders.
So people brought dud locos to you at various shows, and you fixed them or tried to explain how to fix them?
That was the original intention, and it first started, the loco clinic itself, in 1993 at the very first NEC exhibition. And at that show I invited John Edwards along. He himself had just upgraded from the 4mm scale to O-gauge, because I knew full well that at that show we were going to have both N-gauge and 4mm locos to work on. I had at that time had already upgraded to O-gauge.
Yes. So it started off really as a service, and Paul had this idea, Paul Jones presumably.
It originated from Paul when he invited me to join the club. He felt that we needed advising the clients on how to repair, how to make locos run better. Eventually Nigel Smith joined us, and gradually we started to go to a lot of shows up and down the country, and of course during that time of possibly a period of 10 years we'd accumulated an awful lot of locomotives.
That you'd made yourself?
We'd made ourselves,
yes.
generally from kits. And we decided that we ought to show these in a better form. And as I say, the original intention was a test track. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, it's turned out in this form.
Right. Well, you can see, and you'll soon see very clearly, that it's a heck of a lot more than a test track. So what we'll do, we'll see how it works, and I'll be chatting to the other members. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
So, 82G, and now we have Nigel and John. Good to see you again, and again old friends, and certainly cricketing friends as well. An excellent player.
And foes.
And foes, yes. Right, now 82G, that's Bristol Bath Road district, isn't it?
It's an interesting comment, that one, Tony, because we get this comment at a number of shows that we attend. When we tried to think of a name for the layout, we were thinking of all of the names for which would involve words, and it didn't really work. We didn't find something that we agreed on. The locos that we've got are predominantly Great Western, quite a number of Southern, with the odd one or two locos from the LMS region, and the only area that really fitted was the Bristol area from Great Western. So we picked the next number in the old Ian Allen combined volume that hadn't been taken, and hence 82G came into being.
Was there ever an 82G then, or?
There was. 82G actually became Templecombe at the very last days of Steam, but it only lasted as 82G for a very, very short period.
That's the Somerset and Dorset shed?
That's correct.
Right. So Peter's explained that it started life as a test track, and I said, well, it's certainly a hell of a lot more than a test track now. So, but do you still offer that sort of like loco help clinic at the same time?
We certainly do. When we're operating the layout, we operate the layout purely as that. However, when we go to other shows, we still attend on a regular basis as the loco clinic. The loco clinic particularly goes to the Gauge Guild shows and the larger scales association.
I photographed, or we did a DVD as well, of Mike Price and John Glaze's Western View, which is a similar idea. And I have to say that the locos on that were magnificent, but these are certainly the equal. As a photographer, you probably realise O-gauge is much easier to photograph, even though it's not my scale. But these are amongst the best I've seen, and you'll see some close-ups eventually. Now, all four of you collectively have built these, and they're your own property, aren't they?
We have, yes, we have. We go back in modelling quite a long way between the four of us, back to the days of Guy Williams,
yes,
and the early inspiration from Malcolm Mitchell when he first brought his initial etched brass models out, which stunned everybody. We've tried to emulate the skills and tips and techniques that those sort of guys, those pioneers of fine scale modelling, developed, and hence we try to get as much realism into the locos as possible.
So most of these then are built from kits?
A good number are built from kits. There are one or two scratch built locos that we've knocked about. There are also one or two kits on the layout that are in view here that had things wrong with them, so certain parts have been thrown away and substituted either with scratch-built parts or parts from other manufacturers.
Get away, a kit that's incorrect. I don't believe it. But you certainly fixed them. And what's the ratio? Do you have an equal number on at any one time, or is there a kind of rivalry? I rather hope there's a rivalry, but...
There certainly is. I mean, we certainly have the rivalry between the various regions, particularly with the Southern and the Great Western predominating in this. But you can always tell who's operating by the number of Southern locos that are on the layout or the number of Western that are on.
Really?
Absolutely.
But you don't have many eastern ones then?
One.
Where is that? I can't see it. I hope we'll see it before the day is out.
It's
Don't know
actually
about
sitting
that.
in Barry's scrapyard at the moment, unfortunately, but there you go.
What
yes,
is it, by the way?
It's a B1.
A B1.
Yeah.
A splendid loco.
In LNER green.
Is it? So, the period we were saying is early BR, but
Yeah.
we'll also see later, I've been led to believe, 1 or 2 diesel hydraulics and the
Indeed,
like.
yes.
So you're fairly flexible.
That's right. What we try to do is operate the earlier stuff at the beginning of the day and then gradually move through the period. So at the end of the day, we have the diesels and the late delivery steam
Yes.
locomotives.
But you'll see from the still pictures which appear in BRM, we'll try and get appropriate stock side by side.
Yeah, see, the other thing we do, Peter, a number of years ago, built a superb model of Great Bear.
Yes.
And that's always taken a lot of interest at the shows when we've done the loco clinic.
Yes.
We do run that on the layout. One of these days we'll actually do the rebuilt version of that into a castle and probably run that on, take it off and bring the castle on to substitute for
That
it.
was
But that's-
Viscount Churchill,
It was, yes,
What,
that's-
111, it still
It
kept-
was, it
God,
was
I must
indeed.
staggered myself by remembering that. Now, just one final thing before we pop on. My geography of the Bristol-Bath Road area isn't brilliant, although I was there at the fag end of steam. But I also remember watching Southern Steam from the end of, I think it's the second longest platform in the country, at Bournemouth Central, and that looks very similar to what I saw.
Yes, I think you'll find that you've hit the nail on the head there, Tony. When Nigel and I planned the layout, actually planned the track, we were looking for something that was suitable for us to use, and we stumbled across or came across the layout for Bournemouth
Yes.
Shed. Hence all of Peter's fantastic work on the lifting shed and the lifting crane at the far end. The layout the track layout is very similar to that at
Yes.
Bournemouth, other than at the far side of the layout there would have been the station
Oh yes, the
platform.
running lines and the station platforms, but as we'll see later, this is a genuine Great Western Railway turntable in front of
it
us. Well, gentlemen, fascinating. Thank you ever so much, and we'll watch 1 or 2 things working if we may.
Most welcome.
Thank you. Right, Keith, you're the final member of this quartet. Now, I've known the others for, well, as long as we've been going to shows, so with the greatest respect, I haven't yet known you quite so long, but you've obviously fitted in with this. So actually, how long have you been involved with the layout?
I suppose in the last 3 years or so, because I was a member of the Warley Club and
Yes.
was part of the O-Gauge section of the club, building the club layout, of which the guys were part of.
Yes.
I can remember this when they first sort of started it as the original baseboarding with the track work, and then I was invited, I have to say.
So have you actually contributed to the construction of this?
Yeah, there's
Oh, right.
there's bits and pieces here which are mine. A lot of the walls, the grass, and bits and pieces, and some of the locos which you're seeing here
Yes.
are some of mine. But it's been a privilege actually joining the team
Yes.
with the layout, because you can see the superb nature of the layout. But I think it's their expertise which I've learnt a great deal from, in terms of helping me in terms of enhancing my building skills. And as you can see, bringing some of my locos up to their standards has been, for me, quite a challenge. But with their help, it's been fantastic.
Obviously, the principal interest, certainly in Peter and John's case, is Great Western, although we've got Peter Scott there and John's West Country. So yours are what? Southern or Western?
No, basically Southern. That's my home base. That's where I was born and brought up, and Brighton is the name of the game for me.
Oh, right.
That's where I used to spend my youth, watching some of the West Countries and rebuilt Battle of Britons pound down through Worthing on their way down to Cardiff. So, but very little steam, funny enough. But no, mostly Southern, and I just build the locos that I can remember or have some meaning to me. So I haven't really gone for any particular style or any particular...
No, but they all fit in. I mean, I'm looking across here, and to be honest, I'm not quite old enough, even though I'm sure I saw something like, that's a saint, isn't it? Or a court, is it?
It's court, isn't it?
A court.
Yeah.
Now that disappeared, I imagine, in the early 50s. Well, I was born in the mid-40s. But what I see in front of me, certainly the BR Green, is very, very special to me, because that harks back to the period I saw. And it's the same with you then, with your Southern Region locomotives.
Yes, I suppose so. I can remember going to Southampton docks and seeing the US dock tanks pounding around there.
And we've got one there.
And we have one
Is that
here.
one yours?
That's mine.
Oh, right.
And I can remember the Q1s and out of Brighton. They're absolutely filthy looking. More so the
shiny,
mines.
isn't it?
Well, yes, it's got to have the brush on it, as they say. But in general terms, it's about, in my opinion, building what you remember and what works for you. And, and I think the layout is flexible enough to allow whatever sort of locos you want to run to be able to run on, as you can see.
I've seen it in operation, and you'll see on the DVD how perfectly it runs. So, Keith, thank you ever so much for your input.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy watching the running.
We will. Gentlemen, it's been my pleasure. Thank you ever so much. Wonderful.
Thank you, Tony.
So, there you have it. You'll have enjoyed this one. It's inspirational. See it at Telford in September, and see it at our own shows at Peterborough and at Doncaster. Wonderful.